Hi, this is Doug Manch, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Yes, welcome back, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 126, and you're with one of the High Priests of Khonshu, Rey, tonight. A slightly different and weird one. Look, just to be completely honest with you, I am battling a leaking ceiling at the moment. It is Saturday evening here in Australia. When this drops, it will probably be hopefully Saturday early afternoon for you over in the US and otherwise. But yes, welcome anyway. So don't worry, there's still plenty here to be had. Some of you will know that what we have in store for this show will be a review of the new CONAN Serpent War issue 2, which came out last Wednesday, as well as another episode of The Hunt for Khonshu'S Golden Sceptre. That's episode 7, our serial adventure. Very exciting stuff. And finally, we have also a LUNAR-PICK classic run review that's due to the waning crescent in the sky, which deems that we do a classic run. So that's Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 10. And that will be with special guest Looney, Noel, Looney Tunes, Tate. So that will round off the show. Now you may notice that Khonshu and the other High Priests aren't here with me. It's just myself for this episode. It's kind of fortuitous because I've got to keep one eye on that leaking ceiling and kind of one eye on my phone because the plumber's about to turn up any second. But before we go, look, I thought what I'd do, since it's just myself, and I won't do a comic review justice for CONAN Serpent War 2, what I thought I'd do is that I'd just give a really brief review of it, just on my own, with the hope that Rebecca and or Khonshu will join us for a proper CONAN Serpent War Issue 2 review. So, actually, I've just read this not that long ago. So, first off, before that, I actually want to give just a little bit of a shout out. I listened to Capes and Lunatics, catching up on some of their great episodes, their fellow collective members, and I want to give a shout out to a singer-songwriter called Parry Adams, a friend of Phil, one of the hosts over there, and she's got a Kickstarter for an album she's called Whiskey Aftermath. So I'll put this in the show notes, and I know generally we have a discussion amongst the hosts as to, what recommended reading, listening, and watching we do. I thought I'd just give that a shout out. So shout out to Parry Adams. She's really good. I mean, they played one of her songs at the end of the interview that Phil conducted with her. So definitely check it out. If you like good singer-songwriter and great vocals, then Parry Adams is the one for you. So I shout out there, and try something new. It's really good to support independent artists. As for reading, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Laurie Hyrup. She's actually quite involved in the Fantasy Comic League, which is the fantasy comic league that we currently participate in. And Laurie actually has released her first novel, which is called Secrets of Tenoria, the Crystal Warrior. I've just started this. It's a fantasy novel. I believe it's Laurie's first one, and it's really cool. So I've got this through Amazon, through a Kindle, so you can purchase it there, and I'll put the necessary details in the show notes for you there. So another independent artist in writing, Laurie Hyrup, and well worth a read. So check it out. It's only a few dollars, I think, for a digital copy. And if you're looking for something to read other than comics, then that is for you. Okay, loonies, well, we better get cracking into CONAN Serpent War Issue 2. just a general overview and review. I enjoyed it. I think it doesn't scale, any immense heights so far. Pretty much similar to issue 1, but it is fun to see Moon Knight and Conan and the likes of Dark Agnes and Solomon Kane in it. There's a bit more action to it. They've been paired off, Conan and Dark Agnes and Solomon Kane and Moon Knight, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of action there. One of the highlights was when Moon Knight actually he finds himself on a pirate ship, and he points one of the cannons down onto the onto the floor or the deck of the ship, and he blows it up, almost killing himself, but taking out a lot of Set's minions. Another highlight of this issue is we see a lot more of Set, which is really cool. And incidentally, I guess it would segue into our serial adventure. There are a lot of parallels, I find, with this story. Similarities, I won't say parallels, and what we're trying to achieve in our serial adventure. So it appears in Serpent War, Set has these relics, which when they're destroyed, they will actually do harm to Set. In our serial adventure, it's the other way around. We have these Egyptian relics. When they are destroyed by Set and his minions, that gives him a bit more of a stronger foothold in our reality. So I found that quite interesting, and just from personal reasons for us doing the serial and reading it in Serpent War, I kind of enjoyed that. But overall, I did enjoy seeing Set in there, and them starting to come at Conan and Dark Agnes, especially in the desert. That was great with the two serpents. Serpent War 2, pretty solid, I think. I'd give it higher than the first issue. Art-wise, I wasn't as disappointed, I guess, as I was earlier in issue 1 with it. I found the characterizations, the figures, portrayed really well in the art, similar to what we mentioned in issue 1, a little bit lacking in the background and the details there, but the characters themselves are well defined. Moon Knight is looking really good in it. He has touches of the David Finch Houston run of 2006, so looking really good indeed. I would give it, I think I gave 6 out of 10 for issue 1. I'd give this, I bump it up a bit more, maybe 6.5 to maybe 6 3/4 out of 10. I'm being a bit pedantic there, but don't want to give it a 7. Maybe it's just under a 7, but really enjoyable, and interesting to see how they take it. This is the halfway mark. There's only 2 more issues, but from what I understand, this will springboard into spin-off series. I know Dark Agnes is coming out in March, I think, or February, and Conan's obviously got his own titles. Fingers crossed we get one for Moon Knight as well. So, so Serpent War is pretty good indeed. Anyway, we'll get into a bit more detail with the review. Again, as I said, once we have either KHONSHU or Rebecca or a guest co-host to bounce off the discussions with. Having said that, now, Loonies, I want to treat you to our serial adventure. This is part 7 of the hunt for KHONSHU'S Golden Sceptre, and I'm very proud of this one. This was a lot of fun to do, and it is all to do with our man on the streets, Tommy, and a bit more of his, I guess, corner of the universe. So I'm going to play that for you now, and after that we'll go to a break, and on the other side of the break we'll go straight into our LUNAR-PICK Classic Run review with good mate Noel Looney Tunes Tate. So yeah, enjoy this serial adventure, and I'll see you on the other side of the review, because it's pre-recorded, so it's already done. But I'll catch you soon. See ya.
With news that one of the relics had been discovered through KHONSHU'S investigation, my attention skulked elsewhere, hoping that I too could play my part to prevent the looming Armageddon. It was clear. CONSHU and Noel hadn't found Khonshu's scepter. They found the orb of Horus. With the golden scepter still hidden, I found myself at the Moon and Sickle, a roughed-up, tough-as-nails bar on the dark side of town. It was here that I hoped to quench my thirst, as well as my curiosity.
What'll it be, sport?
Whiskey. Long road. Neat.
What brings you back to this dive, then? You're either here to drown your sorrows or to stir up trouble.
Neither. Not tonight. I'm waiting for a friend. It doesn't matter where you look in this city. Turn over any rock, and you'll be sure to find creepy crawlies, dirt, and dirtier secrets. But once in a blue moon, you might uncover a gem.
Hey, Tommy.
Gabe, glad you can make it. Sorry to call you in on this. I need your help. Gabe was a downtrodden, out-of-luck vagabond, a product of the streets. He hung out with the likes of Crawley and shared all the same vices. When he wasn't blowing what little he had on street corner dice and other pleasures, he was forever searching for that white whale at the bottom of the bottle. Still, like Crawley, Gabe had attuned to the lower wavelengths and frequencies of the city sprawl.
What'll it be, Gabe? Don't tell me you brought in that filthy teapot again.
Come on, Gabe. You look more like Crawley than the man himself.
Hey, that was my idea first, damn it. Crawley stole that off of me, not the other way around.
A tea bag is a whole lot better than lugging around a teapot with tea leaves.
Get bent, Mac.
Give it here, you mad bastard. I'll fill her up.
So, Gabe, I've heard there have been weird things going on all around town. Home invasions on the rise, random road rage incidents, even unexplained murder. Those relics I told you about a few days ago? Any word on the street?
City's gone nuts, my friend. That gobbledygook you told me about the relics, I'm not sure I totally believe it, but there's something I know for certain. Something's gone and caused some major chaos around here. If you ask me, the water company's tampering with the water supply or something, making our fair citizens go a bit loco, you know what I'm saying?
You got proof?
Nope. There's an old saying, Tommy. Don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. I just trust my old nose. Never doubt your instinct. It's the only thing telling you the truth.
Noted. But apart from that old nose of yours, you got anything concrete to tell me?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. You been watching the news lately, on the telly? You hear about that missing girl?
Yeah, I've seen it. Heard it too. 14-year-old girl goes missing. Media says it's tied to a cult. Her father was on appealing for help. Damn shame. You think it's got something to do with what's happening in the city?
Maybe, I don't know. From what I've been hearing, the media ain't far off in your speculation this time. There is actually a cult in the public eye, something called the Cool Nun, and apparently this missing girl's a member. I have it on good authority that her father told the cops she was ranting about serving. He was told not to mention this to the media. I'm sure you can imagine why.
The Cool Nun. That's not much to go on, Gabe. You got anything else?
Not much else, I'm afraid, other than... The father mentioned the girl spoke of a gnat. Mean anything to you?
A gnat? Like the bug? Wait. Shit. Yes. The girl didn't say a gnat. She wasn't talking about a damn incident. She was talking about Anat, the goddess of war. Gabe, I gotta find this girl. I got a feeling that the Cool Nun cult is just another cell for the Agents of Chaos.
Agents of Chaos?
If I'm right, then they're serving Anat, the war goddess and agent of Set. They'll be making a play for KHONSHU'S golden scepter, or any one of the other relics. But if Anat gets hold of it, well, that's it. Armageddon. At that moment, it occurred to me whether I should have contacted the other loonies, or even the high priests for any of this. But, with most of their hands tied finding KHONSHU'S scepter, or maybe even the other relics out there, I swore an oath then and there to make this a mission of my own.
I guess the best place to start would be with her father.
Who is he?
His name is Bernie Culworth. Check the local news. His face is all over the internet.
Right. Gabe, there's one last favor I need of you. See if you can track down his address. There's a shiny bottle of Centauri for you if you do.
And what about the info that I just gave you?
Here. That should cover our drinks. And a nice meal for tonight.
Consider it a deal.
Here's your teapot, Gabe. Now don't go guzzling down all this dishwater all at once.
Keep it. I now got something a whole lot more worthwhile.
Armed with a lead and a contact from my trusted street connection, and new hope for stopping the coming Armageddon, I strolled out of that dive. And it wasn't before my pace quickened, as the urgency to make contact with Bernie Culworth rushed to my head. Could he be the lead I need to find KHONSHU'S scepter? Or perhaps the Cool Nun were on course to finding one of the other relics. These Egyptian artifacts have proven hard to find, but the man on the street takes what he can get.
Hey there! Do you like comic books? Do you like superhero TV and movies? Well, come on over and check out the Capes and Lunatics podcast. We have such shows as Capes and Lunatics and Super Connectivity, where we cover everything new and current and popular in the world of superheroes. And we also have episode-by-episode reviews of the Marvel Netflix shows and a monthly discussion of everything current on the DC Comics character Nightwing. And a few other surprises all the time. So come join us for the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Yes, welcome back, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, and you are here for the LUNAR-PICK review, and we have a special reviewer on for this episode for our classic run review. It is none other than Looney Tunes Tate. Noel, welcome.
Thank you, Ray.
Always good to have you on the show. It's always a lot of fun. Is this the first time you're on to actually review a comic?
I think it is.
Yeah. This is going to be cool. It'd be nice to get
That's
your thoughts. That's
exciting.
Yeah.
We're breaking new barriers here.
But, yeah, we are constantly paving the way. But this would be good to actually get your kind of live thoughts on a one Moon Knight issue. And Loonies, as mentioned previously, at the outset of the show, we are looking at Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 10. It's another classic Mensch Sienkiewicz issue. It is titled Too Many Midnights, published August 1981. Writer Doug Mensch, penciler and inker Bill Sienkiewicz, colorist Bob Sharon, letterer Joe Rosen, and editor Denny O'Neil. Now, for loonies that haven't listened to us before, or first-time listeners, what we'll do is that we'll go through a bare bones, a synopsis of the issue, and that will be followed by just a discussion between Noel and myself, generally on some main aspects, and we're looking at writing, art, themes, characterizations, and references, and we'll cap it off with a rating. And so, yeah, anyway, Noel, are you ready for this?
I am ready for this.
Excellent. I've got
excuse my voice a little bit. I'm just getting over a cold, so
no worries.
If I sound a little lethargic, it's because of that.
No worries. Let's hope this issue peps you up. Now, Noel, have you got access to the synopsis in the prompt sheet? I was wondering if we can split it up. It's quite a long synopsis.
It's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Do you want to do one half? I'll do the next half.
It's in 3 paragraphs, but there's only 2 of us.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe the second half starts on a riverbank. It's slightly a bit bigger, but you up for the first bit?
Sure, I am.
All right.
All right. You went through all the credits already, and it should be mentioned too that the editor-in-chief at the time was one Jim Shooter, infamous Jim Shooter. Which explains a lot of things when reading this era of Marvel Comics, because a lot of the issues exposition and going over pretty much everything that happened in the last issue, and that was one of Jim Shooter's main purposes. That I think it's credited sometimes to Stan Lee, but it's actually, I think, Jim Shooter who said, every issue could be somebody's first, and so the redundancies start to happen in a lot of, make sure you let everybody know exactly what happened from issue 1 to now.
Oh, okay.
So
wow.
It's pretty funny.
Okay, we certainly see that, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, the bare bones of this. Bushman, Moon Knight's nemesis, has trapped him in a chamber rapidly filling with storm water. The Midnight Man who lured Moon Knight into this trap, and Samuels, Grant's butler, also face drowning. Even worse, the Midnight Man has shattered the statue of Khonshu that Moon Knight believes gave him his powers. See issue 1. On the street, Marlene and Frenchie find Lockley's cab and open a manhole that leads into the trap. Back in the chamber, Samuels and Midnight Man plead with Moon Knight to find a way out. He shakes off his lethargy, and uses one of his darts to pry a brick out of the wall. By this time, he loosens the brick, and the water has risen over his head. The rush of water through the new opening almost takes him with it. He barely makes it back to the surface. Midnight Man plunges in to escape through the hole. Moon Knight cuts the rope holding Samuels as the wall around the inlet collapses. The current pulls Samuels into the sewers. Moon Knight retrieves the statue's head and follows. His cloak catches up the brick and it is lost. They wind up in the river.
On a riverbank, Moon Knight pulls off his mask and tells Samuels, "I'm nothing. Everything to everyone, but nothing to myself." He wanders away, clutching the head of Khonshu. Samuels returns to Grant Mansion. Marlene calls Jenna Landers, who sets Crawley and her sons to work looking for Lockley. Frenchie uses the new helicopter to search the city. Even Samuels joins the hunt. After 3 days, though, no one can find him. In Moon Knight's absence, Bushman begins a crime wave. Finally, Jenna and Crawley find Moon Knight in Central Park, where he grieves for his brother Randall, who, he believes, died nearby. They take him to Grant's mansion, where Marlene tries to pull him out of his despondency. "I jeered the moon once too often, lady, bluffed my way through too many midnights," he says. Marlene shows him another statue of Khonshu and says that the one Midnight Man broke was a copy. This is the original. You did it all to yourself, she tells him. 5 days later, Crawley learns that Bushman and his lieutenants will hold a meeting at the house in Brooklyn that night. Marlene gives Moon Knight a new costume, and Frenchie fires up the new chopper. They arrive as Bushman pulls up to the house and sees a group of police out front. Before Bushman can escape, Moon Knight swings down on his chopper's ladder. "It can't be," says Bushman. "You're dead." The answer, "You can't kill me. Nothing can." Bushman tells his driver to plough through the police. Moon Knight glides down onto the car and knocks out the driver, causing the car to crash. Bushman runs into the botanical gardens, and Moon Knight ducks a burst from Bushman's Sten gun and attacks. With his confidence restored, Moon Knight easily bests his opponent. Back at his mansion, Grant asks Marlene if the statue of Khonshu she showed him is the copy rather than the one he saw shattered. She says, "It's all in your mind anyway. If this one is the fake, then you've proven it by defeating Bushman without the spirit of Khonshu."
Yes.
Yeah, so that is issue very much a second part to a two-parter, but as you say, Noel, very well kind of recapped throughout this issue as well. Overall, what do you think of this issue?
I'm a big sucker for the first volume of Moon Knight. I really love it. So there's, some issues ebb and flow a bit, but overall, it's really fantastic. I mean, you can see right off the bat, that Sienkiewicz's art is there. It's not him yet, but it's still better than most Marvel artists at the time. Or at least unique. I don't know if better. It's that's all relative, but it's unique for Marvel Comics. Everything's slightly elongated, and
yes.
Marlene looks hot, and Crawley looks cool, even though he's a weird. So, he's got the flies buzzing around his head already. There's the backgrounds, which Sienkiewicz really likes to kind of pull. He does that great trick that I think a lot of artists still do to this day that a lot of people don't recognize, is when there's high action, you pull out the background and it's just one color, with the fights in particular. And you guys were mentioning in the last issue how he switches sort of panel composition depending on what's happening. And it goes from kind of a more scattered, or maybe 6 or 7 panels per page, and then when there's high action, it's straight up just like a 6-panel grid or a 4-panel grid. I think this one is more of a 4-panel grid. So it's cool, and the writing is very Doug Mensch. It's lots of the yellow sort of running dialogue, narrator sort of panels. Yeah,
it's very Doug Mensch's writing is, to me, starting to become quite distinct from other writers. It's like a narrative, but he adds a lot more into it. It's not so much just plain out describing. He kind of really makes it more lyrical, for want of a better word.
I think you've said that before. It's very poetic. It's not the Journal of the Night or anything. Yeah. It's really like an omniscient narrator.
Yeah.
Kind of waxing poetic about this silly comic book,
Yeah, exactly. And so you're starting to get a sense of it. I mean, we're only on issue 10 of Mensch's run. And as you say, I believe with Mensch, the same with Sienkiewicz, as you said, Noel, they're not there yet with what they will eventually become, but you're starting to see it. I'm just trying to find, there was a couple of really good examples of Mensch's writing, which kind of is quite distinct for him. Anyway, also you mentioned about the art as well. I wanted to go back to that. Let's just go back to the art. Definitely, I think we don't see Sienkiewicz at his heights. Playing with textures, playing with media. But you get a lot of...
his just straight illustration is fantastic. That's the thing. Yeah, it's not as unique as he would become, with those things. But there's some panels in here that are just so good. There's one where, right after Frenchie and Marlene find his cloak in the sewer.
Yes.
And she's holding it up to her face and crying.
Yeah.
And she says, "Yes, Frenchie, his cloak." And it's just a beautiful panel.
Well, actually, I think even a few pages before that, Noel, there's one of Marlene and Frenchie in the tunnel, and there's like the beam with the flashlight, and Marlene pointing her finger, and it's very kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really cool. She's pointing... It's...
Her face and her posture is really kind of quite model-like.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it looks like it was referenced a little bit there. Like the foreshortening on the arm and stuff really looks like...
Yeah.
I draw a lot from reference, and I just can tell
right.
when someone else has. It's like,
yeah.
Yep, that looks cool. And Frenchie is making a funny face in the background.
So the art, and I think also as well, what really defines is similar to the previous issue, is that Bill Sienkiewicz is inking this as well, which gives it a very particular look. It's still...
And who inked the last issue?
Yeah, Sienkiewicz as well. So it has this kind of sketchy look. I was just reading the other, for a bit of research, a few of the Hulk magazines, Noel, with early Sienkiewicz stuff. A different inker, different colorist, and, light and day of his art. It was a lot more pulpy, whereas this is really kind of a little rough at some stages. I mean, would you agree? It's not. They're not clean lines, clean figures. The inking seemed a little bit rougher.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I've got an original issue here, the floppy. So all the things looked a little rough on this cheap newsprint and cheap 4-color process, but I mean that's sort of a staple of his inking. He refines it to make it look a lot cooler later.
Yeah,
but he's not the most precise inker. I think he does a lot of. There's a lot of artists who do the drawing and the inking, and I think he actually does a lot of the drawing at this stage in the pencils. Yeah. And then later, it's obvious that he can draw things with a giant magic marker now and still make it look cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's refining his process, but still, the compositions for most of these things are pretty cool. When there's Samuels falls into the water after Moon Knight cuts him down. Yeah, there's just a cool panel. There's some I forget what you call those lines, but like motion lines of Samuel falling, and he's going, "Oh," and Moon Knight just above him.
Oh yes, that's
it
really
looks
nice.
Really cool.
It's a really nice shot because the perspective of Moon Knight is quite different as he kind of jumps down. Sorry, Noel, can you just hold on for a sec? I've just got to turn on some air conditioning. 1 sec.
Ugh, I wish I had to do that.
Sorry, I just got a message from Eve. It's a bit stuffy, and I think Finn was stirring. He's just sleeping now, so just hope he doesn't wake. Hope he doesn't wake. No. It's pretty late, so he probably won't. So we were talking about that Samuels panel. So a lot of, I think one of the attractions for Sienkiewicz's art is, and we've mentioned this in the previous episode as well, and in general, is his fluidity of motion with Moon Knight. Is just his mastery over the human form of movement, so you do see a lot of that here. He certainly does make Moon Knight look very graceful.
He sure does. I think he's mentioned before. He said Moon Knight was sort of his graduate school for comics. That he really built up a lot of his skills doing it, and he had to do these fast. This was a monthly book, and I'm sure he's not the fastest artist on earth. They're right. There are some kind of sketchy kind of inks here. There's that same one we were talking about where Marlene is pointing at the camera and she's got her flashlight. There's the panel that's just a kitty corner from it where you can't really tell what is going on with Midnight Man's face or anything. I know he's supposed to be messed up, but it's kind of sloppy. And there's another one later in the book too, an action shot with Bushman where I couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on in that panel.
Yeah, his Bushman looks very. I mean, this is very early Bushman. He still seems to be like a work in progress. He
is.
I do like his spikes on the back of his.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, there's a shot of him getting out of the caddy, and he's got the spikes on his back. It's awesome.
He could never really. He'd need a. He could never really sit down properly in a chair with a back. He'd have to sit on a stool for a long time.
Yeah, or flip the chair around like he's a high school gym coach or something.
So, I mean, the art's... I'm just flicking through it now. As you mentioned, there is a lot of... Actually, towards the very end, it's all 4 panels, right? One...
Yeah, his fight with Bushman is all 4 panels.
All 4 panels. I wonder what do you think is the intent here? Because similar to the previous issue, Noel, we didn't actually speculate. Why the simple layout? What do you think he's achieving? Because, I mean, it's not... I don't think it's through just, idleness. I think he's intending to do it.
It sort of brings the story together. It focuses your attention a bit more because everybody knows how to read a 4-panel layout.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, which is kind of strange because it starts before they find Mark all crazy out underneath that bridge or whatever. But it slowly sort of comes together right when they find him. There's the panel where, I think that's the last panel. Yep. Right as soon as they find him with all the newspapers over him, yelling to himself. That's where the 4 panels start through the rest of the book until the very end. I think it's just to focus your attention. I don't think it's laziness or anything.
No, absolutely not. No,
it's very much intentional, and I don't know if that's a direction from our boy Dougie or if that's a Billy thing, but. It really does make it, even with some of the wonkier panels, like I said, in the fight, it makes it easier to read and know exactly. It's kind of like Marcus got his shit together.
That's interesting,
And so it's sort of like a kind of a psychological way of reminding the reader that, okay, he's got his shit together, now it's time to wrap this up.
Actually, that's a really good point. And it would have been cool. I mean, not to say that, we're telling Bill Sienkiewicz how to do their stuff and stuff, but linking that with the psychology of Mark. And can you imagine, how he's literally, because in this story he's literally having his breakdown, and that's one of the main subjects of it, and it's about him pulling out of it, him losing his belief in himself because he relied so much on Khonshu. It would have been cool around that stage where the layouts were all kind of discombobulated and random, and then when he gets...
If this was Bill Sienkiewicz, 5 years later, that's probably more what if he would have... this is him experimenting. It would have been a lot more chaotic and sketchy and crazy, and then snapped together when he would have got that. But there's a little bit of that. Yeah. There's some panel borders that he does the wavy lines and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a hint of that. I mean, you can just see him growing as a storyteller with his illustrations in this.
Yes. I mean, because, again, as mentioned in the last episode for part 1 of this, if you look at issues 8 and before, like 1 to 8, his layouts are a lot more dynamic, which is amazing to lead me to believe why this Midnight and Bushman issue or 2-parter does he decide, okay, let's make it really kind of rigid and quite consistent. It's just an interesting thing, because I think in issue 11, if we go to issue 11, he breaks away from this form. So it's just interesting to see, to understand what his intent was. Also, with the writing, sorry, Noel, just to jump to the writing you mentioned, and we were talking about Mensch's thing, this is the one that I found, like... So an example of what we were saying, again, about his lyricism. So as Mark goes... this is about page 11. As Mark wanders off mumbling to himself, I'm no good, I'm no good, he kind of passes by these two construction workers. And and mentions here... sun rises, a red stain on filthy water, and the early morning activities of the city's dock workers are interrupted by a moment's diversion. And that's when Mark walks by, just mumbling to himself. And then the narration continues, and they grin and guffaw, for it's always heartening to see one whose lot is worse than their own. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of insight.
One of the first times guffaw was ever mentioned in a comic book, probably.
Very old school.
Yeah, it's a good, very old word. It's a good descriptor. It's great.
But, I mean, there's a bit of insight in that narration. It's not only just telling what's happening. There's actually Mensch's trying to delve into human behaviour here as well.
Yeah, and it paints the world a bit. I mean, this is... Early Moon Knight was very self-contained within its own story. There's very little hints of the rest of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that Bushman goes on a crime spree, and it's like vicious crime wave hits the city.
Yes.
If this was really in the Marvel universe, that wouldn't even be an issue.
Yes.
Like how many heroes you have to go take down just a guy with a tattoo on his face. It's not very hard.
Absolutely, that was one of my points as well. It's also mentioned here. Bushman's become the new king of Manhattan crime. I mean,
I
again,
thought that. I was like, Kingpin would have something to say about that.
Where's the king? Yeah, exactly. Where's the Magia? Where's the Hood? Where's all the other gangsters? So you're very much this pocket of the Marvel universe seems to be on its own. So that was interesting. That was an interesting take there from Mensch. With the writing, if we go back to the plot, Noel, so the main crux, I think, of this issue, as mentioned, is Mark's loss. What did you think of this? This is the first time that actually Mensch is I think exploring now the identities kind of blossoming in Mark.
Yeah, that was one of the first things I noticed, which is because it always makes me think of interviews he talks about. He's like, I never thought the multiple personality thing was much of a... I never meant it to be that way, but he's just lying. Like, it's so clearly obvious that, I mean, the big thing of this is Mark loses his shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, I'm not Lockley, I'm not Grant, I'm not even Khonshu's avatar, I'm not Mark Spector, I'm not anyone. And it's there plain as day that this guy has multiple I mean, Marlene mentions it more than once just in this issue that he's fracturing.
Yeah, I tend to think as well that he's trying to feel his way through this. Mensch, he's molding the character of Moon Knight like in front of us through these issues. Because as you said, and it has been put down on tape that it was never meant. These identities weren't meant to become like identities as they are today. But as you said, we can see it here. Mensch is saying, okay, I've got this as something that's very kind of, I guess, unique to Moon Knight, and he's just testing the waters of what can be done to it. Another thing I'd like to draw on as well, Noel, and I'll jump to it. It actually references older issues. Is Mark's strength, Moon Knight's strength. He makes mention in this issue that he's lost it, and I believe that's a reference to his superhuman strength, which has been kind of retconned a couple of times. Even before,
it could also just be his strength of will.
It could be, as well.
Because it's never mentioned quite that it's like a physical thing. He just says, sort of his strength. But it has been retconned a few times. Yeah, because when it started, right, it was the. I mean, before Khonshu was even in the picture. The strength. He says he gets his strength from the moon or whatever.
Yeah, from the werewolf.
And then Yeah, and from the werewolf, and then it's stripped back down to this,
Yes.
and then it's mentioned again. Yeah, I think that's almost more ambiguous than his personalities are. Like, to me, his personalities are quite clear, but it's like, as a superhero, what actually is this guy is a lot more ambiguous.
Yeah, and again,
I mean, the fact that he needs the big thing is, he thinks he needs some sort of avatar of Khonshu to be a hero, and whether that's actually like a physical thing, but to me, it seems much more like a mental thing.
Yes, and that's actually another great point about just going further on with the mental issue, because what we again also see in here is obviously his reliance on Khonshu. And what we see at the end, Marlene kind of tricks him. Like, we don't even know if it really is a fake Khonshu statue or she actually did swap it, but she proved to Mark that it was all in his head. And one of the big things that we know in Moon Knight is, and one of the things that a lot of loonies love is, we don't. There's the kind of conjecture as to whether he is actually crazy or there is actually a Khonshu. I mean, currently in present day Moon Knight, we know that Khonshu seems a bit more established, but I love that ambiguity as to you don't know whether it's just his mental illness making it all up, or you don't know whether Khonshu's real.
I agree. I like that more. It just makes for more interesting reads, but I guess you can't do that forever.
No.
So I understand. And Khonshu is such a, maybe the same way that if Dougie didn't, I like calling him Dougie. If he didn't mean for the aspects to be such a huge part, he at least planted the seed, and it was sort of the same way with. I guess it wouldn't be until almost the Houston run where they really brought Khonshu out as like a character. There's definitely hints before that too. But it's just you plant a seed and then another writer will take it and run with it, which is cool. And that's comics and that's serial storytelling. Like we said, there's only so many stories you can tell.
Exactly.
The same way. And that is one of the cool things, and everybody has always mentioned it, that there's so many versions of Moon Knight you can do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many, meaning that it's a good thing, that you can switch it up and that he's more ambiguous. Just the fact that so many of the fans argue about what it should be or shouldn't be, and I don't care. It's like it can be anything. That's one of the glorious things about Moon Knight.
Absolutely,
and how he was set up to be sort of ambiguous, and you can take it all these different ways. I mean, he's freaking fighting with Conan the Barbarian right now, or whatever. Okay.
I mean, it's so funny because it always rocks the boat. Because I mean, it's just natural. I mean, you have a preconception or you have your favorite, regardless of the diversity of how Moon Knight is being portrayed. And like when you do say that currently, as you say, with him in Serpent War, it may not be your Moon Knight because you might have your favourite like Houston or Mensch, but there's always that kind of teething period where you kind of get to grips with, okay, this is another Moon Knight take. Because admittedly, I have that as well, like with Khonshu being just bang, just there and directing Mark, and there being a potential lack of his identities being explored. If you look at the Cullen Bunn Moon Knight annual recently as well, no kind of nods to his identities. So writers take bits and pieces of Moon Knight that they find interesting and they run with it, but it's always interesting to see how Moon Knight is portrayed, and that's what I love. I love how different he is in each volume. But I think this issue is quite important, Noel, because Mensch, whether he is aware of it or not, he has raised all these things about Moon Knight now. He's kind of brought it all to all to play.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's put the bones, the anatomy of the character down pretty early.
He has,
and there's so many fun things to take to go with.
I mean, he's actually brought back we haven't seen it in a while, but in issues 9 and 10, he's brought back the Egyptian mythology with Khonshu, the whole statue. I mean, that was missing in the previous kind of issues.
Yeah.
So Mensch is, he's chucking all the ingredients in and seeing how he goes. I wanted to mention...
even down to the fact that they redrew panels from issue 1, pretty much.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And like I said, that could be some Jim Shooter stuff right there, too, though. Remind them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they need to be... exactly. You don't want to be lost. And it's particularly, this is part 2 as well. But yeah... so anyway, with some of the references there are some references to older runs. So again, I took it as the strength, right? So I cited Marvel Spotlight number 28 and Hulk Magazine number 13, which references that was when someone decided, Doug Mensch decided, his strength comes from a werewolf bite. We know later that changes. It will come from some high priests in Fist of Khonshu. And then all of a sudden it just disappears. What do you think of this power, Noel? I kind of like it, with the phases of the moon. I wish they kind of bring it back.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, it's a way to nerf the character a little bit, which you need to do. I mean, he's just a dude, so you don't really need to nerf him that much. But it's a built-in mechanism to put your character in peril. It's one of the flaws of a hero like Superman. You're left with kryptonite, I guess, or magic. And magic is much, something later on. They're like, we've got to nerf this guy somehow. How do we do it? Magic, I guess. And this is really early on. Is a cool way of showing that, I mean, it's not in this as much, but
no,
it was a cool way of of kind of having, like I said, to put a character in peril. Like, oh no, the moon is only at a sliver. His strength will be. He's going to get his ass kicked, and
or in some
that's something I kind of that's something I kind of wish they would bring back, maybe.
Oh, it's funny. It's like in some instances, it's like the moon's hiding behind some clouds. And all of a sudden, it's like it's a full moon.
Yeah,
but he somehow loses his strength because
he doesn't have direct sunlight or moonlight on him. So he's it's pretty cool. Funny. That's something that they should have done with Superman.
Yeah.
If it was a cloudy day, maybe his heat vision is a little weak or something.
That's it. Yeah, he's just staring at someone. It's like, what are you doing, dude? I'm heat visioning you. Are you?
What are you doing, you weirdo in spandex? Stop staring at me.
Exactly.
It's not working. His hands on his hips, pushing really hard like he's got to poop.
That's right. Yeah, what are you doing? It's not working. Another reference here I got as well with Mark in Central Park and mentioned in our Bare Bones courtesy wiki. He mentions his brother Randall dying, and that is a reference to the Hulk Magazine 17, Hatchet Man, where they had a bit of a kerfuffle between the two after his brother Randall accidentally kind of didn't mean to wedge an axe in the back of Marlene's back. But that was a reference to that in the Hulk magazine. Also, there's one other final reference, Noel, I just wanted to put out there. The new Mooncopter, again, a lot of mention about Frenchie. Have you got it ready?
Was it just 2 issues before this, I think, the old Mooncopter?
Yeah, issue 7.
Was destroyed?
Yeah.
And then the cooler one comes out.
Oh, thankfully. I mean, that old one needed to be trashed. So a good, and we haven't got to the cool one yet, which is my favourite, the Crescent Moon, but it's like a jet. That's the
I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the best.
It's like it sort of looks like a moon Quinjet almost.
Yeah. So a fair few references here to not only the series itself, but to actually prior appearances of Moon Knight, for those that are keen. With characterizations, Noel. Okay, so anything stand out for you with the characters used in this story? Bushman or Marlene?
One thing that was really cool, the Bushman is like a big one for me because he's saying that Khonshu didn't create him; he did.
Yeah. Yes.
At least by killing him, he which I really liked. That it just set up Bushman as like his main baddie.
Yeah,
which is quite cool, and he does a couple really great Doug Mensch sort of monologues But at least it's split up between panels, and it's not just like a million words in one panel.
Yeah.
But that's an aspect I really like of this book.
It's
the character. He seems true to form.
Yeah. But I mean, but by saying that as well, it's almost as if he's asserting his dominance over Mark, saying like, I'm the one responsible. Like, I created you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a kind of really, really cool setup. I thought
that's
what
the
was
classic thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
like who created they've messed with that with Fantastic Four a lot of times with Doom. Who created who,
Right.
sort of, and
yeah.
things like that. I mean, that's just one example. It's in every superhero comic book, sort of. Like,
Yeah.
who are you without your main villain? You're nobody.
Yeah, I mean, but for me, this stood out as well. I think it's the first time Bushman's actually claimed responsibility for the inception of Moon Knight. He fears him. I mean, you see that. Like, he doesn't like him, but he.
We said it's funny because he's like, I created you, but I can still. Whoop. It's a little like the old joke about parents say to their kids like, I made you and I can take you out.
Yeah. I think that's
which is pretty funny.
There's
a great line from Bushman. He's like, "You're wrong, Spectre. You're just a phony geek in a jerky costume." I love that.
Because he knows him. He knows the fella. He knows Mark. They did a lot of work together as mercs, so he knows the guy.
Yeah, doesn't even call him. He doesn't even say he was kind of a shitty merc.
Yeah.
He was like, I made you better by killing you. You were a shitty merc.
Yeah. So Bushman
and Moon Knight calls him a murdering freak. The dialogue is great. It's so 80s, early 80s. Awesome.
And then obviously Bushman he runs rampant in the city, and you see bags of heroin, just labelled heroin, on the thing. So
it looks like a kid just scrawled heroin.
Yeah.
I still do love that sort of half-page panel, though. It's like split up between vicious crime wave that hits the city, and there's guys like throwing down a
till,
like a cash register, a till.
Yeah.
And then there's the heroin, and then the guy's just shooting at a guy
just
for some reason.
Yeah. All the images.
It's a great way to like.
Yeah.
It's just classic. It's very noir, actually. Like cutting through, like old noir movies, sort of, where you just cut from like a montage,
like
cutting
a montage.
from thing to thing, and he's able to do it all in one half-page panel. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But the dialogue over it is pretty great too. How Bushman's the new kingpin or whatever, which you'd mentioned before.
Yeah. One of the things of Bushman I found interesting over here, and I never actually made the comparison, and the irony of it is that, and it's recapped in that Jim Shooter-esque kind of recap near the start. We all know the origin of Moon Knight. He kind of goes against Bushman because Bushman's tactics are a little too overboard, and Bushman's saying, instill fear, this is how you get kind of stuff done. And that's kind of what rubs Mark the wrong way, and that's what that's how Mark ended up in the desert. Now, the irony is that Mark now, as Moon Knight, he is actually using that exact mode, what do you call it, a method that Bushman uses.
Yeah.
He uses fear on his enemies. So I find that quite ironic, and how the two are kind of linked together. I was listening to a podcast, and they were mentioning how the whole thing about Moon Knight dressing in white because he wants his people to see him coming. Yeah. I never put that together. Yeah, because he's really kind of trying to create this fear, and this idea that Khonshu actually needs this fear to fuel himself. That's why he's got this avatar of vengeance as well. That's why he asked Moon Knight to go out and be his avatar of vengeance. But then, that is exactly what Bushman does, and it's exactly what Mark was against, before he became Moon Knight. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, it's me too. It's very tropey. I'll use the one reference per episode, though. I mean, I always say that Batman is pop Moon Knight, because that's the Cape Crusaders' big thing too, is to the whole reason he dresses as a bat is to install fear into the criminals, because they're a weak lot and they're easily scared and suspicious and superstitious. And with Moon Knight, it's so much more dressing in all white and bringing fear to people because he's like there, like a bright ghost in the night. Yeah, it's very tropey for a lot of. I mean, this goes back to things like the Shadow, and the Phantom, and those kind of pulp 30s and 40s. Kind of proto superhero things, and it's a natural evolution. It's just cooler, and it's a much more unique take on that trope, that whole aspect of Moon Knight.
Yeah, it just riffing on that, as you say, on that trope, which is pretty cool.
It's a unique riff on it. It's really cool.
Yeah, but. It is quite, it is. I guess it is a trope, and it's quite obvious looking. But I never did really pick that up.
But he puts it so hard into the DNA, because you could even read. When I read back through these old issues, like I don't know if we'll talk about it, but like the very last page, last 4 panels, the kind of wrap up is fine, and that's very kind of old school. Kind of superhero, like he kisses a girl at the end and all that stuff. But the page before that, where he's in shadow, Moon Knight is in shadow, and all you can see is the crescent moon on his chest, and he says, "Don't bet it on a Bushman, not today, loser." That's very like, if it would end right there, that's just like the Warren Ellis run.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You could almost see Warren Ellis reading this, being like, "Yeah, cool. Oh, I get that. That's where it ends." And then in the original copy, then there's an ad, and then you flip the page, like, "Oh, there's a wrap up."
Yeah.
Well, what if you just ended it at that spot? That's way cooler and ambiguous.
It is.
All right, let's just do that. So it's almost like he just tore the last page, like Ellis just tore the last page out of every Moon Knight comic he had, and just wrote from there.
And that's actually, like, dare I say, it sounds very simple, but that's the genius of Ellis's thing, intentionally taking that last beat out, that we're all used to, that little wrap up, and just kind of leaving it hanging. It's quite cool. It's kind of like, Noel, if it's likened to a musical kind of metaphor, it's kind of ending on a dissonant or a unresolved chord. It's pretty...
Unresolved chord, or almost just not even doing the unresolved.
Yeah.
No resolve whatsoever. It's just like cutting it like on the 4 instead of landing on the 1 or something,
and just leaving it and walking away. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I do like the wrap up page though, because I really like the very last panel of Marlene kissing Mark.
Yes,
and it looks almost like an Art Adams drawing or somebody, or
Neil
like
Adams, you mean?
Mark's face. He looks like
it
almost looks like a. What's his name? I can't believe I'm blanking on his freaking name right now. Spawn guy.
Oh, Todd McFarlane?
Yeah, McFarlane. I can't believe I was blanking. It almost looks like a McFarlane or a...
It does.
Jim Larson face.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Like a good 10 years before those guys came to prominence.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. That last panel, that last face is very different, like from the the level of detail of the faces, say, throughout. It has a, I don't know, there just seems to be a little bit more level of detail to it.
Yeah, it's funny because the panel right before it looks just like a Neil Adams drawing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Not just like, but it's obviously inspired by Neil Adams, and then the next panel over it looks like it's 10 years ahead of its time.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
And I love the ending bit as well, and Khonshu seems to smile, a trick of the light, no doubt. So again, it's kind of left, you don't know whether there really is an influence from a deity or not.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. With Mark, what did you think of this, him on top of that gargoyle? Is that Hamlet or Macbeth? I can't remember.
Hamlet is holding the skull.
Yeah,
right?
that's the one.
No, that's Macbeth. I'm sorry.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Because he's holding up Khonshu's head. Alas, poor Khonshu. That's like Yorick, right? I knew you well. It shows a bit of his imbalance here. He's balancing on the gargoyle like stories high up. A nice perspective of him there. Could easily fall. But a little over dramatic, a little over the top.
Oh, it wouldn't be a 1981 comic book without that. I really liked it. I really like the. I like when Mark is just batshit crazy. I really do. It's fun to see. It's like I said, the B-Man is Pop Moon Knight. Like, you wouldn't see Mr. Wayne out on the top of a gargoyle doing anything other than brooding. But when you see Mark Spector, he's out there holding a Khonshu head, like
balancing,
frickin' Macbeth, like losing his shit balancing on it,
just talking to himself. Yeah, it's pretty weird stuff.
It's great.
Yeah. He's really kind of reached a new low. He, as you said, he's under a pile of newspapers in a park. It's just, it can't get
the first of many new lows that he'll have throughout.
But
you could just see how it's easy for Houston to go, okay, look back, a couple decades and be like, there's precedence here for this guy to just lose his crap.
Yeah, and I know Doug said that Houston did contact him, wanted to have a good chat with him because he's a big fan of the Mensch run. Yeah, when Doug...
that makes sense, yeah.
A chat with him.
In a weird way, like, this story is sort of proto The Bottom,
Yeah.
But like we said, this is maybe the first of many lows that Mark Spector has as Moon Knight.
Yeah, this is definitely the first that we see of a massive low that he's had. It's just he's kind of really gone off the rails here, which is, as a follower and a fan, is very exciting to see.
The difference is he actually has his family to help him back out, and his family looking for him.
Absolutely,
which I like. That's something I like about the Houston run is it really is he doesn't have anyone.
Yes.
He's chased everyone away.
That's a big contrast.
And here, there's that great panel with like his whole Gina, Samuel's Frenchie, Marlene, the maid whose name I can never remember,
Neda.
They're all there helping him and talking to him, and it's really cool.
Yeah,
I also love the panel where the maid is hugging him. Welcome back, sir.
It's so warm, isn't it? It's just such a different side of it that you don't really see, and I like it, as well. But I mean, it's so funny that Moon Knight is always seen as the lone wolf, but Mensch is always, and this is not only in this issue, but you always see the support network that Moon Knight has, and it's always a group effort. He needs to find...
Which is smart. I mean, it's a good way of planting seeds for future storytelling, though, too. It's like, have him have a family, people that love him and he loves, and then once you take him away, it's really great stories can come out of that. It's something I really hope that they don't ignore for the television show. I could, in my mind, I see them trying to really go for the lone... the lone knight, Moon Knight. And I hope they don't. I hope they cast some really cool people for Marlene and Frenchie in particular. And Crowley actually is the one I actually want to see the most.
That would be whoever gets that role, a very juicy role. That would be so fun to play. But absolutely. I think they're essential, absolutely essential. I mean, just from this classic Mensch run, they're integral to his adventures and everything, and by default in the Houston run they are integral because of the lack of them and the way that they were separated.
And in Max's run, the way he was able to bring Marlene back in, there's a lot of he read some Moon Knight, he was like, this is something I could really play with Marlene, and then adding a child to the mix.
That was very very unique take on it. So I hope the TV show has it. I hope they don't go down the route of... They can't, really. They'd have to have at least Marlene and Frenchie, but I'd love to see all the rest of them.
I don't know. It's really easy, and they do it a lot, some lazy storytelling, just to have the lone, the lone gunman thing. But they don't always, they always have to build them up. They did that. I'm thinking about sort of the CW DC shows, They had Arrow at first be this lone guy, but then, I've maybe only watched the first 2 seasons, but I know they built up a huge cast of family for him. The same way with, like, The Flash in that same universe. He's got an entire huge team of people that they play with. And they do it in a very soap opera way where they take him away and bring him back, take him away and bring him back.
But it's exactly to say
but you need it.
Yeah, exactly, because you need it to expand the stories and to tell different things. There's only so much you can do with, like a main solo, just a solo show. So very important. And so this is great. I really love how they're all kind of looking for him, and they're doing their best. Even Ricky and Ray, all very sign of the times, white bread. Yeah.
Yeah, what does he call him? Whitey?
Yeah.
Weird thing.
It's crazy. And also, Marlene as well. Like, one of the things I thought here, obviously Marlene, favourite of ours as well, but she's shown here again to be the saviour for Mark. I mean, she's the one that actually gets him out of his funk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big theme in a lot of the
it is,
Volume 1 and before stuff is, she's there. And I think you had mentioned before, or someone had mentioned on the show, that she's not just his support as like sort of, in this comic, it's a little bit of just like sort of the generic woman support, but sometimes she'll go and kick ass on her own. Yeah. And I hope that is something they can push into if they're going to have her on television.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. I'd really love to see. Yeah, you can't have her kind of take a back seat. I'm hoping that she's, at least just on par with Frenchie, because Frenchie's pretty badass as well, So
and there are times in the comics where she is. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I like I said earlier, I really like that panel of her holding his cloak and crying, because it shows how much, she loves the guy.
I don't know how,
but it would be nice. Yeah. It would be nice to see, her. Yeah, kicking some ass too. Yeah, which she does too.
She does. Yeah, she's quite. Seems to be quite. Mark trains her, again in the comics, so she gets some, some hand-to-hand combat training, which is pretty cool.
There's a little. I don't know. There's some sort of dated dialogue from Mark to Marlene.
Yes, there is. I know exactly what
what
you're talking about.
Yeah, but he, she seems to kind of put him in his place a little bit too, which is good. At least maybe she isn't like, shut up, you idiot. But at least she's like, I mean, it's her tricking him that, like, is this statue even real or not? Is really kind of taking charge of being like, don't be such an idiot. Just get your shit together. If this is what you think you need, whatever. Yeah. Get over it. Go be Moon Knight.
Well, yeah, it shows that she has a greater perspective of things than him, and she can, she solves the problem for him, which is really good. So hoping that she has a lot to do in the show. Actually, I hope they cast her well.
I hope they bring her back in the books.
Yes. Well, at least Max Bemis brought her back, which is cool. But
yeah, I would just like to see her a lot more recurring in whatever happens next. For an ongoing, it'd be cool to see somebody put the family back together a little more.
I know. We haven't seen it for a while. It's quite. Yeah, it's been a long time. We've got dribs and drabs. We had Frenchie come back as a zombie in which is cool. I love to see Frenchie back, but you need to see everyone. I want to see Jenna. I want to see Ricky and Ray. I want to see Crawley. We haven't even seen Crawley. Crawley not since the Lemire run, and that was even kind of out of this world. I love Crawley in the Lemire. I love the fact that Crawley in the...
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, the family's kind of back together there, I guess, aren't they? Yeah. But at least for the first sort of third of the run. Yeah. Until Moon Knight and Khonshu have to kind of take care of business on their own.
Yeah. But I love that.
That was actually a really unique way to bring them back.
Yes.
And to show that psychologically Moon Knight needs those people. To the fact that even in his sort of messed up reality or whatever, they're there for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And how Crawley seems to know what's going on when everyone else doesn't. Yeah. I love how he's kind of
wasn't very stoked in the way Marlene was handled in that.
Just trying to remember.
But the rest of
she
was just kind of like in a daze for a lot of it.
That's right. She was like sedated or something, or
She comes out of it and does some stuff, but yeah,
she could have done a lot more. Yeah, so I don't know. Any other final thoughts, Noel, for this issue 10? Before we get into our ratings.
Yeah, other than that, no, something had popped out at me and I've already forgotten what it is. So, nope, I think we're good. I think we're good.
Well, actually, a final thing. I'm going to end on a slight downer and stuff. The climax, the showdown of Bushman and Moon Knight in the botanical gardens, I thought wasn't the most thrilling to me.
No, it wasn't. I think if with some more, I think the idea was it was supposed to be sort of brutal, and it didn't really land so much. I do like it's pretty quick. As soon as Moon Knight gets his foot on him, it's over.
He does.
Bushman gets one punch, two punch, Moon Knight just tackles him, and then it's over.
Then it's over. It's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's not the greatest choreography of fights for comics, but I see the intent, and I appreciate that. There's also one thing, too, that I have. When they're in the tunnel and Midnight Man is kind of forcing Moon Knight at gunpoint to save them. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he would able to take one brick out of the wall with a shuriken, and then kick a hole and have the whole masonry come down. That didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Kick a wall underwater. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful kick.
Yeah, with one brick missing. Listen, I've kicked plenty of brick walls and they don't go anywhere.
He must have found he must be like Karnak. He's found the weak spot.
Maybe
in the wall. But and Midnight Man, really, he kind of fluffed out, didn't he? There's not much he really had to. It was really Bushman.
Which I might be in the minority here, but I really like Midnight Man as a character.
I want to see him back. I want to see him done. I want to see him reach his potential.
Moon Knight's Rogues Gallery. I just do. A lot of people think it's pretty weak, but I think there's a lot of standouts that are really great.
Yeah.
Bushman, obviously. I think Midnight Man is cool. Scarlet, obviously, is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Black Spectre.
There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, Morpheus. I love Morpheus. Morpheus.
Me too. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So anyway,
all right. Should we get on to Moon ratings then?
Yeah. So, Looney listeners, we have two systems here. We have our vanilla rating, which is our stock standard. Noel, you can choose one or the other. Or we have CONAN rating system, which he kindly has loaned to us for a, unforeseeable time. A very unique rating system, CONAN. Noel, which how much would you give this one? Too Many Midnights, issue 10 of the Mensch Sienkiewicz run.
I think I will go with CONAN rating system because it's just funnier. It's a really great one. I wish someday we could cover a really crappy one because I would like to use the worst one. Because that's great. I would give this a solid round boy.
A solid round boy.
Somewhere, I mean, it's probably like a 6.9 to me, something like that, like almost a 7. But since we're rounding up with the round boy, I would just go for it's a solid issue.
Yeah.
I give the whole run a big fuck off Moon, but yeah, I think that's somewhere in there. What would that be? Sort of a 7.5, a 3/4 Moon.
3/4 Moon. 7.5.
Or maybe a waxing gibbous, I guess. I don't know, somewhere right in there. Like, just below 8, but for CONAN system, we'll just round up.
Oh, so just below 8, not below 7. So 7.9, something like that?
Wait, is that what I meant? Oh, no, I'm sorry, just below 7.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to be, like your other host for your other show, I'm trying to be a little, and you've mentioned it too, a little bit more critical.
Yes, of course.
Than I normally would be, because I just love Moon Knight. So I'd be like, it's a 10. Everything's a 10.
Yeah.
Shut up. It's all a 10. Don't say anything bad ever. Shut up. It's a 10.
I would too.
Ray, shut up. It's a 10.
I totally agree. And I think what you've said about the whole run, because I think to kind of experience it as a whole, It's really a good. Obviously we are Moon Knight fans, but as a whole, I think it's a lot more satisfying.
It's really the pinnacle.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Ellis run. That's kind of my favorite when I just think about it. If I say to somebody, but if I really, or not, if I kind of don't think about it, I just say the Ellis run. But if I really, every time someone's like, "Where should I start with Moon Knight?" I just say, Volume 1.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Just excuse some of the 80s isms, but it's all there.
But with the Ellis run though, for me, you can pick one issue here and there, and that's a lot of fun. Whereas I can't distinguish a particular issue with the Mensch run, but as a whole, I just love it. It just seems to, each of the issues seem to be like a brick. That makes a.
I could pick an issue. Hit It.
Oh, Hit It, yeah, Hit It is good. I mean, they're all good for very different reasons, but they just make a greater whole. It's really I love the Moon Kings one as well. I mean, the craziness of that. So there are many good ones. Scarlet Fascinera, the number 14, is really cool.
Yep.
So a lot of really good ones. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, they just work really well all together. So you're giving a solid round boy, just a bit under that, rounding it up. 6.9 though. I've recorded that. That's going into the annals. I've given it. I've given it a
10. You gave it a 10, Ray. You gave it a 10.
I'm giving it above a Getting Small Moon again. I'm going for a 6.5. Again, being quite strict with the marking. 6.5 is very decent.
Getting Small, SMOL.
I asked Connoisseur, I said, what is that? What is small? He goes, what are you talking about? Small, like a small bean, a small moon, small. Oh, okay, right. I won't question it.
It doesn't
any
matter.
further.
It's genius.
It is. So there we go. Looney 6.9, 6.5, a very enjoyable issue. Highly recommend you read part 1, issue 9, and then issue 10. But actually,
and then check out the previous episode, is where you covered it.
Yes, and just read the whole volume 1 again. I
just read it.
Agree with Noel. It's a ripper. There's a reason why many loonies love it as their favourite run of Moon Knight. So thank you very much, Noel, for this review. Before we go, there's a plug I'd like to shout out for you. It's on, I believe it's on tonight.
Fingers crossed this episode comes out at that time.
Yeah. Where is it, and who are you playing with?
It's at the Eagles 34, which is a sort of a I don't even know what you call that place. It's not like a proper club, but it is a proper club. Mm-hmm. It's a... Oh, that's weird. Sort of almost like a VFW type thing. Uh-huh. But it's cool. They have 3 rooms, and we are playing in one of those rooms with a band called Careful Gaze, Flower Stalks, and then Coyote Kid playing solo, or acoustic, I guess. So yeah, that's tonight-ish at the Eagles, which is in Minneapolis in the Seward neighborhood. Okay. And it should be a rockin' good time. Excellent. And I'm never going to say that phrase again.
So, Looney listeners, if you don't know already, Noel, we're referring to the band Deleter.
I should mention that. My band, Deleter.
Yeah. I know. And Noel's very generous, provides the music for the show. So if you're around the area, go check him out. Go up there. Go say hi to Noel afterwards. Go shout out. Go request list of demands, for them to play. And you'll probably recognise, the music for that. But no, a big thank you, Noel.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good gig as well tonight. And we're going to go to a break, and we'll wrap up the show after on the other side.
Hey there, everyone. I'd like to tell you about the YouTube channel I Am Your Target Demographic. If you're a fan of comics, we have plenty that you'll enjoy over there, including a series called Heroes Like Us that explores comic characters of all sorts of different identities. And we even have a series that defines words that are used in nerd culture that you may not know what they mean. So you can check us out by heading to YouTube and searching I Am Your Target Demographic, or look up IAYTD on any social media outlet.
Yes, welcome back, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, and that was a review that I had with Noel, Looney Tunes Tate, looking at Moon Knight, Volume 1, Issue 10, with Midnight Man, and more importantly with Bushman. So yeah, that was great to reread that issue. I also want to flag, and further to what we discuss in that chat, when you listen to this, hopefully when it drops early enough, Saturday night, the 21st of December, Noel and Delita, that awesome band and a bunch of musicians that have generously given their music to our podcast, they will be performing at Eagles 34 Club, MPLS in Minneapolis. So if you are a local, and if you do love Moon Knight, if you do love listening to Into the Night, you can catch the musicians who create the beautiful music on the show up live, and you can say hello to Noel as well, the frontman. He's a guy that just gave you that review. So a big shout out to Delita again, and they'll be playing tonight. Fingers crossed this episode comes out before Saturday evening, wherever you are, or well, more importantly, if you're in Minneapolis. Anyway, that will do us for this episode. Apologies, a little disjointed. I'm still waiting for the plumber. Next phase, I've got a few ideas bubbling. I think it will be the last one of the year. We'll take a little break. I need to do a little bit of writing, a little bit more writing for our serial adventure, and a bit more writing for our reviews on Paint Monk's library. So I need a bit of time for that. But just, stay tuned on our newsletter. There may be another episode coming which will be like reflections on this year, like how ITK has gone in this year. I mean, we've done a lot this year. I'm very proud and very happy with the productivity of our podcast this year. So just want to reflect on that. I want to thank the relevant people who were involved in making it all possible, and maybe looking ahead at what 2020 has for us. So that will be on next week. It's a new moon, I believe, so it's a spotlight. So the spotlight will be on 2019. Anyway, loonies, I am out of here. As usual, we are part of the collective, so please listen to all the other collective members. There's a link in the show notes there for all the collective members. Great podcasts there, from Inner Demons, Ghost Rider podcast, to the Collected Edition by Paul Matthew Carr. There's a Man Thing podcast. There's also The Signal of Doom, our good friends there, and another one by some crazy larrikins called The Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. So there's a little something for everyone. Go check it out. Details in the show notes. Also, speaking of show notes, you can contact us on itkmoonknight@gmail.com, also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. All the links are down there. Just contact. We'd love to hear from you. It's always great to discuss your thoughts and to give you a shout out on the show. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Last bit of housekeeping. A few days from now as well, I'll release episode 7, the serial adventure for the Hunt for CONSHU'S Golden Sceptre. I'll release that separately so you can listen to it on its own rather than as being part of this show. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed the reviews. And as we always say, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.